Hi there and welcome back to another lesson, everyone. In continuation with our lessons on how to answer task 1 of the IELTS academic writing exam, we'll be looking at how to answer pie chart questions. So let's get to it. For task 1, you can be presented with a single pie chart or multiple pie charts where you will have to report the main features and make comparisons wherever necessary. For this, you will need to use appropriate vocabulary in order to boost your lexical resource score. Before we look at our question for this lesson, let's learn some helpful vocabulary. Now, the information presented in the pie charts will be represented by percentages, so let's start with that. To describe the percentages as fractions, you can word it like this, appropriately, of course. For example, if you want to describe a trend that takes up 75%, you can say 3/4, or if it's 55%, it can be written as more than half. You can have a look at the table on the screen for more. What will catch our eye when we first start to analyze a pie chart is the largest section and the smallest section of the chart. So here are some helpful phrases for this. Again, you will need to see whether this ties in appropriately with your chart because not all of them will work or make sense. Examples of good wording for the largest section of your pie charts could be something like, it is clear that dash represents the largest portion of dash, whereas dash is undoubtedly the smallest. Or, sales of dash stood at a certain percentage in 1925, which is the majority of whatever it is. Now, if the percentage is around 60%, you can say nearly a third. And if the percentage is around 52%, you can say over half of all respondents or something like that. Examples of good wording for the smallest section of your pie chart could be something like a small fraction or exactly 30% of students. Again, if the percentage is around 25%, you can say roughly a quarter, or any of these examples as well. If you'd like to describe percentages in a different way by taking the majority or minority, you can also use these words and phrases. To describe percentages around 75 to 85%, you can say a vast majority. Anything between 65 and 75%, you can write it as a significant proportion. You could also use the phrase a majority when describing the chart, or if there's a key present, and let's say, for example, it's male and female students, you can say a majority of male students preferred, etc. Now, a common question that students ask is, which tense should I use to describe pie charts in the IELTS? And that's a great question. Here's where you need to pay attention to the headings, subtitles, and in the question. They will specify the years. That being said, if the year is before the present year, use the past tense. If the year is after the present year, use the future tense. And if there is no year, use the present simple tense. Sometimes you may even have to use a combination of tenses, but do be careful when you have to do so. All right, now that we have some vocab and phrases to get us going and sorted out our tenses, let's look at our question for this lesson. The pie chart below shows the percentage of 5 kinds of books sold by a bookseller between 1972 and 2012. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, from what we can see, this question has multiple pie charts that we can use to compare and contrast. Right? Let's start our process by analyzing our data. We can see that there are 3 years and the data ranges between 1972, 1992, and 2012, which means it's over the span of 40 years with a gap of 20 years in between. Looking at the majority sections over the years, for 1972, we see that it's others. 1992, we also see it's others, and 2012, it's adult fiction. For the minority sections, we see I can also see that the charts for 1972 and 1992 look fairly even. So working with the information we have and from the analysis, let's begin to write our essay. We'll start with our introduction, of course. Remember, we have to paraphrase the question. And again, our question is, the charts below show the percentage of 5 kinds of books sold by a bookseller between 1972 and 2012. So we can say something like, the pie charts compare the popularity of 5 different book genres according to the sales of a bookseller during the period of 1972 to 2012. Now on to our overview paragraph. Overall, it is apparent that adult fiction was the most popular type at the expense of the other genres, which declined in popularity, especially other types of books, biography, and travel. An increased interest in children's fiction can also be seen. Right, we're halfway through writing our essay. Now on to our detailed body paragraphs. Since we have 3 years present, I will divide my paragraphs into that. With the first one comparing 1972 and 1992, and the final paragraph between 1992 and 2012. Now remember, you can do this in any way you like, and there's no wrong way of doing it as long as you interpret the information correctly and write it with your grammar and lexical resources on point. This is the test of your written English after all. So for this, I'm going to write, in 1972, this particular bookseller sold relatively equal proportions of each type, with others leading at 25%, followed by adult fiction, children's fiction, and biography at 20%, and travel at the lowest, which was at 15%. By 1992, adult fiction had risen by 5%, while the others and biography declined by the same number. Travel and children's fiction grew by 3% and 2% respectively. On to detailed paragraph number 2. In the final year audited, there was an upsurge in adult fiction accounting to 45%, and children's fiction ticked up to around 25%. The rise in adult fiction was compensated for by dramatic drops for the remaining genres, with others finishing at 12%, travel at 10%, and biography at 8%. Let's put the essay together and see what this looks like. Well, it looks like we've completed another task 1 question type. Have a go at writing this question as well as practice other pie chart questions too to get the hang of them. Stick around for the next lesson where we'll look at how to answer math questions. See you then.